And let's stay with that story. Reports that the US has carried out a cruise missile attack on an airbase from which Syrian government planes are thought to have staged a chemical weapons attack on a rebel-held town. Let's talk to Professor John Blaxland, who's the acting head at the Strategic and Defence Studies Centre at Australian National University. Professor Blaxland, thank you very much for being with us here on BBC News. What do you make of this response by the US?
It seems to be a vertigo-inducing about turn in foreign policy. What we've seen is a president who was only America first in his rhetoric, with implied isolationist tendencies, drifting considerably away from that in the weeks and months since then. And we are seeing now a globalist president who is very assertive, taking an action like this, seems to be emotionally driven, timed, it seems, to coincide with President Xi's visit to the Mar-a-Lago, with ramifications and implications for China's policy towards North Korea and, of course, the delicate balance on the Korean Peninsula. But what is particularly disconcerting when it comes to what's happening in Syria is that while this was targeted at the military aircraft that appeared to have been involved in deploying the weapons, this is a base that the Russians are associated with. It's very close to the naval and air facilities that Russia leases essentially from the Assad regime. Russia is heavily invested in this architecture. The United States is throwing a stone in the pond, and I don't think it quite understands the effect of the potential ripples. This is very disconcerting.
Yes, interesting that you use the word emotionally driven. Is that the way to conduct foreign and defence policy?
Well, this is the million-dollar question. Of course, what we're seeing is the United States act. I understand foreign leaders in Europe and in Australia and elsewhere have been advised of American action, but not necessarily consulted. And that is a very big difference. This is a president acting essentially unilaterally and in complete contradistinction to the declared policy of the last few months of leaving the Assad regime in place, largely because of the recognition that on the ground, the Syrian government forces are much stronger since they've got Russian backing. And of course, that Russian backing has enormous implications for what the United States does there, because Russia will be extremely sensitive to what United States messaging is all about. And Russia will be in turn looking to send messages to the United States elsewhere. And while we've seen in the last few weeks a cooling in the relationship with Russia, particularly because of the domestic political equation in the United States, where Trump has had to back off because of congressional pressure over the close people around him who are getting caught up with legal battles, the relationship with Russia seems to be cooling as well, without a clear game plan about how to handle the fallout.